A single bullet, fired from a rooftop, cuts through the dry Utah air, and with it, the life of one of America's most polarizing conservative voices. Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, is mid-sentence at a college rally when his throat explodes. The microphone drops. His body collapses like a puppet with the strings cut. The crowd gasps, then screams. The shooter doesn't run, he doesn't hide, he goes home. His name is Tyler Robinson, 22 years old, quiet, clean record, recently radicalized, and by his own admission, he'd been planning this for over a week. He left a note under his keyboard. This wasn't murder, this was necessary. But now the state of Utah wants vengeance. Not through rehabilitation, not even through a quiet clinical injection. No. They want to tie him to a chair, place a target over his heart, and have 5 men fire rifles at once, 4 with live rounds, 1 with a blank, so none knows who fired the killing shot. A firing squad, in 2025. This is more than a murder trial. It's a collision of ideology, justice, and the ghost of America's past. This is the case of Tyler Robinson, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And the terrifying question we now face: what happens when political hate becomes state-sanctioned death? Before we go any further, ask yourself this. Where were you when political violence became entertainment? Where were you when the line between justice and revenge blurred into a trigger pull? Don't just scroll past this one. Don't let this be another headline you forget by dinner. Subscribe if you believe the truth deserves more than silence. Comment if you think the system's broken, or if you think it's finally working. And share this video, because if we're going to watch history repeat itself, we should at least have the decency to look it in the eye. When most people hear firing squad, images of old war movies or distant history come to mind. But in Utah, and in Tyler Robinson's case, it's chillingly real. Here's how it works. 5 marksmen line up, rifles raised and aimed at the condemned's heart. 4 rifles are loaded with live rounds. 1 contains a blank. The blank's purpose? To give each shooter plausible deniability, to share the burden of death. The condemned is strapped to a chair, facing a target placed over the heart, a grim clinical method designed to bring death swiftly. It's brutal, it's intimate, and it's deeply controversial. Legal battles over firing squads stretch back decades. The 8th Amendment, which forbids cruel and unusual punishment, stands at the center of these fights. Courts have grappled with whether the firing squad constitutes a more painful, barbaric death than lethal injection. Arguments rage on both sides. Advocates say it is quick and effective, opponents call it archaic and cruel. But there's a catch. Utah only turns to firing squads when lethal injection drugs are unavailable, a situation becoming more common due to pharmaceutical companies refusing to supply execution drugs. If Tyler Robinson is convicted and sentenced to death, the road to execution is long and uncertain. Years of appeals, motions, and legal challenges will delay final sentencing, potentially a decade or more. And alternatives remain. Life without parole looms as a possible sentence, depending on plea bargains or court decisions. Some argue the justice system's focus should be there, sparing human lives and grappling with justice without crossing the irreversible line. For Tyler Robinson, death by firing squad is not just a punishment. It is a symbol of a state grappling with the limits of justice, mercy, and the lingering shadows of violence. It's a question we all must ask. In a world fractured by ideology and anger, is this really the answer we want? The moment a bullet tore through Charlie Kirk's neck, everything changed. He collapsed. No dramatic fall, just a slow, awful slump. Those closest to him rushed forward. Medics scrambled. Sirens filled the air. But despite all efforts, the damage was immediate. Fatal. Charlie Kirk, at just 31, a man who made his life a megaphone for conservative activism, was declared dead at the hospital. Behind the headlines, behind the political clamor, there was grief. Raw, devastating, deeply personal. Family members, shattered. His mother and father, struggling to comprehend a world without their son. The funeral became a gathering not just of family, but of a fractured nation. Political figures arrived, some to mourn, others to make statements, but all bearing witness to a life cut short, a public symbol turned martyr in a bitter culture war. On the other side of the tragedy was Tyler Robinson's family, the ones who looked at the grainy surveillance images and saw their son's face. They confronted him. The moment of truth was painful, parents torn between love and horror, between denial and the unbearable truth. His partner, once his closest confidant, sent messages after the shooting, words heavy with shock and heartbreak. "Why did you do it?" Robinson's confession came in texts, apologies laced with remorse. "I am sorry to involve you," he wrote, a small window into the crushing isolation that followed. The courtroom echoed with silence when Robinson appeared via video, a suicide prevention vest visible beneath his jail clothes. The weight of that image spoke volumes, a young man caught between justice, despair, and fate. In this case, the forensic details are as chilling as the headlines. Bullets recovered from the scene bore strange markings, engravings, symbols, even internet memes, a disturbing signature, an unsettling message hidden in steel. DNA on the rifle's trigger sealed the connection. The science was undeniable. And there's another haunting fact. Children were present during the shooting, young witnesses whose trauma the law recognizes as an aggravating factor. In this courtroom and in these memories are the shattered lives behind the politics, behind the ideologies, the blood, the silence, and the shadows left in their wake. Tyler Robinson didn't run from what he did, but the law is coming anyway, and it's coming for everything. 7 charges, 7 chances to turn a man into a memory. Count 1. Aggravated murder, the only crime in Utah where the punishment can be death. Not metaphorical death, actual execution, not life in a cage, but an expiration date chosen by the state. Count 2, felony discharge of a firearm, because even if Charlie Kirk had survived, the intent behind that bullet doesn't change. Count 3, violent offense committed in the presence of a child, because in that crowd of students, somewhere in the chaos, a 10-year-old girl saw it happen, saw a man gunned down in real time. No movie magic, no filters. Counts 4 and 5, obstruction of justice. After the shot, Tyler didn't disappear, but he did try to erase the trail. He hid the rifle, got rid of his clothes. He knew enough to cover his tracks, even if his conscience didn't seem to care. Counts 6 and 7, witness tampering. He told his roommate, his partner, to delete messages, to stay quiet, to lie if questioned. "Don't let them twist it," one text reads. "They won't understand what this was really about." But that's the thing about truth in court. It doesn't care how noble you thought your reasons were. Robinson appeared for his first hearing by video, wearing a suicide prevention vest, staring blankly into the camera. No theatrics, just silence, like a ghost watching his own trial begin. The judge denied bail. Too dangerous, too calculated, too late for second chances. The legal machine is now in motion. Preliminary hearings, arraignment, and eventually, a trial that could grip and divide the nation. But don't expect closure anytime soon. This trial could take years. Because here's where it gets complicated and chilling. Aggravated murder in Utah carries one of 2 penalties: life in prison or death. But not just any death. Utah is one of the last places in the United States where the state can choose to execute a person by firing squad. Not just an idea, not just history. Real bullets, real shooters. 5 rifles aimed at your heart, 1 loaded with a blank so no one knows who fired the fatal shot. It's not symbolic, it's not poetic, it's brutal, and it's legal. Lethal injection is the default. But Utah's law is clear. If the drugs are unavailable or the condemned chooses, the firing squad becomes reality. That's not justice. That's theater. That's ritualized violence wearing a judge's robe. Of course, Robinson's lawyers will fight. They'll claim mental health struggles, that he was consumed by ideology, that his motives were political, not personal. They'll argue that he's remorseful, that he's young, that he can be rehabilitated. And if all that fails, they'll challenge the method itself. Is death by firing squad cruel and unusual? That's a constitutional question the courts may have to answer. Again. Because if Utah gets its way, Tyler Robinson won't just be punished. He'll be executed in front of history. And the state will pull the trigger 5 times. September 10th, 2025. Orem, Utah. A crowd gathers inside the student union at Utah Valley University. Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, the firebrand founder of Turning Point USA, takes the stage. To some, he's a hero. To others, a villain in a tailored suit. But one thing is certain. He has the mic, the spotlight, and a room full of young minds listening. Across campus, 200 yards away, Tyler Robinson is kneeling on a rooftop, a scoped rifle steadied in his arms. No tremble, no hesitation. He waits, then he fires. The bullet rips through Kirk's neck in front of over 100 witnesses. Blood. Chaos. Cell phones hit the floor. A conservative icon falls. And just like that, America's culture war turns fatal. But this wasn't a breakdown. It was a blueprint. Prosecutors say Robinson planned this assassination for over a week. He left a note under his keyboard that read, quote, "I'll take the chance to take him out." He messaged his partner before the shot, warning, "Don't ask questions. Just know I'm doing what's right." And after it was done, he sent another message. "It's done. I think it had to be me." His stated motive? He believed Charlie Kirk's rhetoric, especially on transgender rights, was hateful, dangerous, and deserving of an end. Robinson had no prior record, no known affiliations, no manifesto, just a slow burn of radicalization and a belief that violence was the only voice left. He didn't try to flee, he went home. By the next morning, the FBI released surveillance stills. Within hours, someone recognized him. His parents. Imagine that, seeing your son's face tied to a political assassination. They confronted him. He confessed. Then they called the police. The arrest was clean, almost surreal. No chase, no shootout, just silence and handcuffs. Authorities found DNA on the rifle's trigger. And in his phone? Dozens of texts, searches, and deleted images that paint a disturbing picture of ideology turned action. His roommate, who is also his romantic partner, is cooperating with investigators. And the messages they've handed over, they don't suggest regret, only conviction. This wasn't just a crime. It was a message. But the question is, was Tyler Robinson trying to silence hate or become the very thing he claimed to stand against? Let that settle in. A 22-year-old executed a political figure and went home like it was just another Tuesday. What drives someone to believe that killing is a form of protest? If you think you already know the answer, keep watching. You might want to check your assumptions at the door. Utah, 1976. America reawakens its death penalty after nearly a decade. But even then, one method already seemed more haunted than others: the firing squad. The last time Utah used it was in 2010. Ronnie Lee Gardner voluntarily chose the firing squad. 4 live rifles, 1 blank, a paper target over his heart, the crack of rifles in the dark at dawn. It was the first such execution in 14 years. But here's a twist few remember. In 2004, Utah banned new choices for firing squad. If you weren't already sentenced and didn't pick it, that door was closed. Then, 2015. Lethal injection drug shortages force lawmakers to resurrect the specter. They pass a law. If drugs are unavailable 30 days before execution, the state may revert to the firing squad. This is no relic. This is contingency. Why? Because Utah does not want executions to be delayed indefinitely. Because in its anatomy, the option of firing squad remains a tool in the legal arsenal. A brutal, archaic tool, but a legal one. Let's talk precedents. Ronnie Lee Gardner is the most recent. John Taylor before him in 1996. The state has, since 1977, when the death penalty was reinstated nationally, only used firing squads in Utah 3 times. Supreme Court rulings? Wilkerson versus Utah, 1878, is often cited. That early case held that certain forms of corporal punishment, like flogging, were cruel and unusual. Firing squads survived these early challenges, in part because the law treats execution differently from corporal punishment. But modern 8th Amendment jurisprudence still calls everything into question. How much pain? How much dignity? How much cruelty can a legal method bear? Now, what makes a homicide eligible for Utah's death penalty, and possibly by firing squad? Tyler Robinson, prosecutors say, didn't act in a fit of rage. He planned. He located vantage points. He messaged. He waited. That crosses the threshold from crime to capital crime. Many watched, young people, families. The law sees that as an aggravating factor, that the violence was not contained, and that the risk is not just to one person, but to innocence, to society. The law doesn't just punish the act, it punishes what the act represents. A public figure speaking in public. An ideological battle played out with bullets. That scales up the offense. So, these factors stack. Premeditation, plus public victim, plus child witness, maximum charge. Now onto defenses. Here, the battleground shifts from law to psyche. Robinson has no criminal record. Some in his family say he was ideologically radicalized recently. Maybe he believed he was fighting hate with lethal force. Maybe he thinks he's doing something morally justified. Defense likely to argue mental health issues, ideological conflicts, online echo chambers playing the role of preacher, perhaps plea deals, perhaps life without parole if death is out of reach. Even if death sentence is imposed, there are legal choke points, appeals, constitutional challenges about cruel and unusual punishment, constitutional issues around competence to be executed. Is someone with severe mental illness or incapacity fit for execution? We just saw in Utah the case of Ralph Leroy Menzies, scheduled for execution by firing squad, but blocked by the court because of advancing dementia. Which brings us to the method itself, firing squad. The law in Utah: lethal injection is the default. Firing squad is the fallback when injection drugs are unavailable, or when an inmate under the grandfather clause already chose it. The mechanics are gruesome and ritualized. 5 shooters, 4 live rounds, 1 blank, a target over the heart. The shooters are anonymous, all to diffuse blame, to distribute guilt, to shield the human agents in the state machinery. Legally, ethically, this is one of the rarest, most controversial forms of state-punished death still on the books. And if Tyler Robinson is convicted, and what prosecutors want is imposed, this could become only the 4th case in Utah history in our modern era to end this way. A firing squad isn't just execution, it's symbolism, an admission that other methods are failing, and a question: what kind of society uses cogs and triggers in the name of justice? To understand Tyler Robinson, we must go where most don't look, into fractures of belief, identity, and rage. Robinson's texts say he was disturbed by hatred, by what he saw as hate speech, especially aimed at transgender people. He claimed he had had enough. His ideological position shifted. Some in his family say he recently became more outspoken for LGBTQ trans rights. But with that shift came conflict. Internal, external, moral friction. Conflicted beliefs, amplified anger. Zero space for debate, maybe. Only opposition. Radicalization in digital age. Messages in group chats, online forums, social media algorithms that feed grievance. Echo chambers where your anger confirms others. It's easy now to believe speech equals violence, that speech is violence. Then the sociological layer. America in 2025 is increasingly polarized. Free speech is weaponized. Hate speech is defended as principle. Political violence, once distant, creeps closer. Rallies, threats, then actual bullets. The public reaction has been thunderous. Shock, grief. For Charlie Kirk's followers, it felt like losing not just a person, but a voice. For others, an unsettling confirmation that speech wars aren't just metaphors anymore. Courtroom reactions, family members, supporters, press. Some refusing to accept silence, some demanding justice, some scared of what this means. If ideology becomes execution, what remains safe? Mental health looms large. Did Robinson break? Or did he build the break in his head long ago? Is ideological rage a disease? Or is it a choice painful enough to justify legal mercy? And surprise fact, Utah has recently blocked the execution of Ralph Leroy Menzies because of dementia. The question: if your mind slips, must your body still pay? It's rare, but in cases like this, those psychological and sociological pressures aren't just context. They are battlefield. Because when a public figure becomes a target, when political division becomes violence, when someone claims moral justification for murder, it shakes the foundations. It forces a society to ask, when do words become weapons? And when do they become warrants? At stake in this case is more than just the fate of one man. For Tyler Robinson, the outcome is life or death, a punishment that may be as rare and final as the firing squad itself. For society, it is a test of how we reckon with political violence and the limits of justice. And for public discourse, it is a stark reminder of how words, harsh, hateful, or passionate, can spiral into tragedy. Charlie Kirk's death echoes deeply among his supporters, a loss that feels like an attack on their values, their voice. Yet, the possible execution of Tyler Robinson carries its own shadow, the heartbreak of a family torn apart, a young life extinguished in the name of justice. What message does this send? Is justice served through death? Or does it perpetuate a cycle of pain and division? In a world fractured by ideology and anger, where does accountability end and where does vengeance begin? Now I want to hear from you. Should someone face execution by firing squad in the United States today, even in a case this extreme? Does the political motive behind a crime make the death penalty more justified or far more dangerous? Can words ever be so powerful that they lead to murder? And if so, how do we balance free speech with responsibility? If this video made you think, please subscribe for more deep dives. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm listening. And share this case, because the stakes here are bigger than any one person. Thank you for watching.